Now, not going to lie, I was a bit hesitant on making this video, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of comments, negative comments about my opinion and what I put across here and what I express. And as I just said, this is only my opinion and my current view. Things do change and may change in the future. So, this is my thoughts on why dating sucks for men right now. Okay, so I got four parts to this, and we'll get through them bit by bit. But the first one is the game is rigged. The next one is a term that I didn't coin. I didn't coin this term, hoflation. And then the next one is suppression of masculinity. And then obviously the conclusion. So let's start with a fun fact. 5 men to every 1 woman. That's the statistic right now. That's the statistic of why the game is rigged. So bear with me while I look at my notes. Dating apps are primarily a business. Now that's easy to forget because they tell you, oh yeah, we want you to meet the woman of your dreams. We want you to delete this app and you're going to marry the beautiful woman that you see here on our website. We have only the best quality women, and other terms and phrases like that used for marketing just to get you to pay some money because it's a business. And generally, we'll come back onto this, but men will pay for romance. Men will pay to try and find that partner. Men are generally the first people to put their hand in their pocket to be able to shortcut or to be direct in getting what they're looking for. So often you'll see a man, wealthier men will pay for somebody to do the searching for them, whether they're buying a house, whether they're buying a car or a business. They will find somebody that will do all the research and the legwork and the running around for them. Hence why men are happy to put their hand in the pocket, because they understand the value of time. If you're looking for a new business to invest in and you spend a year going through hundreds of businesses, that's a lot of time wasted, and your time is money. So men appreciate time. Even if we have to hire a qualified person to do the job, whether it's a mechanic or electrician or a builder, it's going to take a lot less time if they do it properly to regulation and standards than if you or I do it over the next weekend for the next 5 years. It's just common sense to employ somebody to do it for you that is more qualified than you, because your time is money. You can be better spent your time doing something else. All right, okay. Another example of this would be like a nightclub. You get like a woman's night only, maybe on a Thursday night, women get in for free. And the club owners know that'll draw the men in. Men will follow women because men want to find romance. All right, okay. Yeah, and it's not in their best interest for you to marry a woman. Going back to the apps. It's not in their best interest for you to marry a woman. They want you to have failed relationships based on something superficial like the looks and a silly bio. So you have a failed relationship and you come back again, and then you pay and you subscribe and you upgrade to gold and to this and to that, and looking for likes and get your profile put at the top of the list. It's a business, and they know men will pay because we want to shortcut and to get the legwork done for us so we can spend our time doing other things. All right. But ironically, again, we'll come back over this. Traditionally, women did the chasing. You might say, no, that's not the case. Well, actually, if you go back and you look at old movies and old films where you see a woman dropping a handkerchief, and then the man will stop and pick up the handkerchief and go, oh, sorry, my dear, did you drop this? And then a conversation ensues. But actually, the woman chose that man to drop the handkerchief in front of. And in lots of other tribes as well, the women will seek out the men that they want. And even in this day and age, a really clever woman will look for the lifestyle that she wants, and then she'll find a man that she can put up with, or to be compatible with in that lifestyle that she chooses, whether it's at the golfing club, country club, whether it's at the yachting club, or wherever she will go to, or whether it's rock climbing. She will go to that lifestyle that she seeks, and then she will look for a man that she's compatible with. Because a man is interchangeable as far as a woman's concerned. You know, it's somebody that's there that's compatible, but also can provide and help with the lifestyle that they're looking at. All right, I don't want to dwell on any stage too much because, again, I'm a little bit apprehensive of how I deliver this. There are people that are much more articulate than myself, Jordan Peterson being one of them, that are able to highlight the traditions and psychological reasoning behind what we do. So the next one, hoflation. Like I said, I didn't coin that phrase. That's not my word. It's just an example of a zeitgeist, of a maelstrom that explains what's happening at the moment. And if you look back at traditional times again, and you think about maybe your grandmother, economics were very, very different back then. You know, the man could afford to go to work and bring home enough money that the woman didn't have to work, and she could look after the house, look after the children, and bring the children up, and get and be the feminine side of the coin, you know, and really be the other half to a good family environment. And I believe that, you know, it's 50-50. We should be bringing half each, you know, enjoying the masculinity and enjoying the femininity, the divine femininity. I love women, and I think women should be respected. And hats off to women for their role in society. Without women, where would we be? Okay, so not trying to put a negative down spin on things, but you're looking at things like war. There's mostly men that do that. Burglaries and the security aspect of worried about a burglary. And tires and oil change and things on the car. And DIY and things like that. These are generally perceived to be traditional roles for men. Now, men have a lot of traditional roles that we're expected to fulfill. And likewise, women would have a traditional role. And yes, I already said that the economics of today is very, very different. A woman is often necessary for a woman to go to work to help keep afloat the house and the lifestyle that is required to bring up a family. But often a woman, no, maybe I shouldn't say it. Sometimes it's highlighted in social media that one party doesn't want to fulfill those traditional values, those traditional roles of maybe cooking food and looking after the children and keeping the house clean and tidy. And there's a real backlash and a kickback to that kind of traditional role. Yet they're still expecting, not everybody, but a lot of time it's still expected that the male will still provide the finances, still take out the trash, still sort out the car, still get up in the night if there's a rustling downstairs or a window breaks or something spooks people of the house. So from my perspective, and you might agree, you might disagree, there's a lot of social media and a lot of regular media pushing and projecting the idea that women have kind of dual standards. They want to be princesses and looked after and taken care of and all these things, but they don't want to give and reciprocate in some of the other more feminine or traditional roles. That's my perception anyway, and also seems to be the perception of mainstream media. Okay. Also, going back to the why it sucks for men, women generally, and not all women, but generally women are much more savvy when it comes to money. Now, I don't know whether that's intrinsic because they have to think about their survival and their safety, and so they look for a man or a person that can support them financially. So in that respect, often women will not pay for apps, like Tinder or Bumble or well, Bumble's aimed towards women. That's why Bumble's failing as a business, but that's another story. But a lot of these apps want people to upgrade, and it's only the men, generally, from what I hear and what I see, are upgrading and paying because men will pay, whereas women want to retain her resources for future famines and that kind of theory. So yeah, it feels like in general women aren't really willing to bring so much to the table now. And because it just seems to be so many men, and now with the internet and apps and just the connectivity, the instant connectivity is very different in this day and age. And I had an interesting conversation with a feminist recently. And I said to her, look, with all due respect, if you get dolled up to go out on a night out with the idea of getting the attention of males, and I get dolled up with the intentions of trying to get the attention of females, I said, despite your values, if you chose to, I mean, all right, she had values and morals and things like that, and she professed them. Despite that, I said, you could quite easily get a free drink and then potentially get taken on a date even that day and get a meal. And you could, if you wanted, depending on your values or how you feel at the time, you could then sleep with that man for that night and do it the same thing again the next night and the next night. I mean, I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying she would. I'm just saying that is possible, and some women do that. Some women survive by getting men to buy them drinks, buying them food, and then there's the whole sugar daddy rabbit hole that I'm not going to go. But I said, flipping that coin over, if I was to go out dolled up and no woman is going to offer to buy me a drink, if I look like Brad Pitt, maybe, or George Clooney, maybe, but no woman is ever going to buy me a drink, take me out for a meal, and then have sex with me straight away that night. If I don't play a whirligig of games of trying to impress her with money and business and chatter and all the rest of it. My chances of that happening on a regular basis or easily, if I was going for women of my sort of, I don't know, category, if you will, or my sort of level, I don't know whether you want to talk like financially or looks or age, or for example, because that opens up another whole can of worms. And that kind of answers the question why a lot of men these days are going abroad. Like I said before, I lived in Cambodia, and there are a lot of men dating younger, prettier women. And there's good reason for that. Those women will respect their man. Those women will cook for their man. Those women will give your man a massage. And in return, he protects them. He helps them financially with food and a roof over their head and things like that. And often they'll stay together for a long, long time. So long as that man can provide. Not just because it's exotic, he's a white man, and he's got maybe a European passport, but he's able to provide. And in Cambodia, it's a poor country. It's a very poor country. So their own men struggle financially and can't compete with, I don't want to say this racistly, but with a Westerner and that passport in finances. Because I don't want to say white man, because a Western man generally has, or is considered to be wealthier than a local man. And so it seems to work for both. Anyway, I'm not going to go further down that rabbit hole because there's a whole another level of creepiness and taking away from the local men and things like that. But that's kind of the way it is at the moment. And it's accepted because 99.9% of them are adults. And they're agreeing to this as adults. So you've got to remember that. You might think he's a creepy old man, but so is Hugh Hefner. He had lots of women around him. People might think that's creepy. Leonardo DiCaprio. He only dates women under 25. I don't know. People even think like Clint Eastwood, is an old man but could still attract younger women. There's a thing about older men that is much more attractive. Whether it's the fact they're wise, whether the fact that they have their own security, whether they are more handsome or what. But men as they get older tend to become more valuable. And women as they get older, generally, not my rules, generally is perceived to become less valuable. I mean, put it this way. If you were a billionaire or millionaire, Leonardo DiCaprio, would you want to date a 50-year-old woman knowing that she's had lots of partners, many, many partners, perceivably, and her body is not at its peak? All right? He's not maybe looking to have children, but if he can garner 25-year-olds with beautiful bodies, all right, there might not be the intellectual stimulation, but he's having fun, having a good time, and it's reciprocated and it's legal, then why wouldn't he have a 25-year-old woman compared to a 50-year-old woman? It goes back to what I said before in regards to value. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on too much about that because some people have very different views. I'm just trying to be my perspective and what I see, what I perceive in the world around me. Okay. Statistics. The suppression of masculinity. Suppression of masculinity. Now, why did I say that? It feels like society doesn't want men to be men. Oh, it's toxic masculinity. It's wrong. It's this, it's that. But if you look at the statistics, 99% of women are 99% of the workforce in children's nurseries are women. In primary schools, 95% of the workforce are women. And then in secondary schools, it starts to even out as the bravado and the young men get a bit more challenging. And it's 60% of women working in secondary schools. Now, I got some more statistics, but I don't want to bore you. Women in big groups tend to seek, and this is from Jordan Peterson, tend to seek egalitarian, equality in amongst their peers. Whereas men will go for a patriarchal hierarchy. Now, that's whoever's got the best skill or is best at doing this thing, he's the leader of that. And then a couple of guys will help below that. And then in this department, whoever's best at doing that, he will be the leader of that area. And that works really, really well. And you can see that from the game shows of Love Island and things like that, where often the men will do really, really well and the women will do poorly because of the patriarchal system and the pecking order. But yes, there are occasions when maybe a woman's team will do better than men, but that's less likely and more rare. But if you look in nature, all right, we talk about nature a lot. If you look in nature, every single herd has a patriarchy, whether it's elephants or dogs or crabs. Jordan Peterson talks about crabs under the sea. There's a patriarchal, and there's a reason for that. That's helped evolution and genetics. If all of us men were gay, or if we were all very, very effeminate and soft, who's going to be the firefighters? Who's going to be the police officers that deal with the aggression and the violence when it comes to a big brawl or a protest that gets out of hand? Who's going to be the ones that go forward to war? Yes, there are women in the army, but an absolute fraction of women on the front line. I had an argument with my brother recently, and he said, no, there are women soldiers. I've worked with them. And we were both wrong in that, and we were both right in that I I didn't communicate exactly what I was trying to express. And that was, it was only recently, in the last sort of 10 years, that the ban has been lifted from women fighting on the front line. And there's a really good reason why women don't fight on the front line. And I can hear you all screaming at me now saying, oh, it's rubbish, you're a bigot and all the rest of it. Men are in their hearts and are protectors. And if you've got a group of guys, let's just say, I don't know, SAS or some other elite squad or some just troop making progress forward, like building by building, and then there's a woman in that group, and if that woman gets injured or is in a dangerous, precarious situation, that will compromise the rest of the team. Now, you can say that's wrong, and you can say that's just the way life it is, but it's been documented and evidence that men will break ranks to protect a woman. Now, there's a reason, I don't know if you've seen it, but one of the recent shootings, I think it was in Oklahoma, there was a shooting in America, Oklahoma, in a cinema. Lots of people got shot, and it was a very, very crappy situation. Now, some of the survivors, for example, 2 of the survivors were women. They were being held covered over by their boyfriends that were on dates with them. I don't know if one was a husband and one was a boyfriend, but the men put their lives at risk, covered up the women, and the women survived. Now, those women have got a lot of trauma and guilt to deal with, and that's a heavy burden to carry. But they are alive, and they can potentially move forward and move on. But the guys and the families of those that died, they chose to protect that woman because it's inherent in most men. Most men, when push comes to shove, will choose to protect a woman. Now, there may be flip side to that women would choose to protect their children, which is true. And often a woman will choose her children in a marriage over her husband, which I think is wrong. But that's another whole story. Because children grow up and move away, but your man is supposed to be with you for life. Anyway, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. So it's it's shown statistically that men in military or violent situations will break from their orders to protect a woman. And that's why in the past it's not been a good idea to have a woman in the front lines. It's the same for the prison service, for example. So we would say horses for courses. Now, I'm a great believer that having women in the police force and the prison service is the best thing that ever happened. Women officers can be extremely good at reducing tension in a prison or in a police situation, maybe in a bar. Because in the prison anyway, nobody dare hit a woman officer. Because there's that primal instinct again of protection. And so the woman officer I've talked to has said, look, either you can come down calmly and quietly now and we can sort this out, or I'll come in there and wrap you up. They were very, very well trained with a miniature, not kosh, but like baton, a miniature baton. Often wear it on their keys. And they were very, very well trained to use these to help manipulate the arm and then the bodies of a man. And I've seen women officers put a man on the floor in agony and pain. So they're very, very clever. You know, they're just as good as the men. But the best thing is that they're able to bring across a motherly or a sisterly empathy where they can communicate directly with that man and say, look, either to break down the barriers of bravadoism. You got one man standing next to another man. It's kind of like, who's the toughest? You know, but if you've got a woman there and the woman says, look, either you can come down and we can talk about this, or I'm going to wrap you up and you'll be embarrassed in front of all your friends. And 99% of the time that works. There are occasions when the gentleman is suffering from other mental health issues and other problems, and then that wouldn't work. And when there's a riot, generally horses for courses. If there's a riot and a lot of angry, aggressive people, then it's normally better to send in the big blokes because they bruise a lot less easier. You know, they're a bit more tougher and rugged on their skin. That's kind of the rules of nature. You know, you're not going to send in a small lady in a riot on her own. You just wouldn't do that. It's stupid. So like I said, horses for courses. Now, I believe 100% women have a place in the army, in the police force, and in the prison service, and even in the ambulance service. They are amazing at bringing this empathy and lowering down the levels of testosterone. And I'm sure you could say the same sort of thing for men working in women's prisons. But that's another conversation. So I have utmost respect for women and their abilities and their femininity and their divine goddessness. I don't know how to say that. Anyway, so that's my props to women. Right, okay. HR, human resources. That's a kind of more modern thing brought into the workplace. Personally, I think it's bad. Because often in a male environment, maybe on a building site, and I've been on building sites, men can be quite aggressive and mean and lots of other negative things. But that's the way men communicate. And then when you bring women into that, or you have a big factory that used to be run by men that now gets taken over by women, women and men don't communicate the same. Men don't take offense if men call other men bad names, aggressive names, or wind each other up, or pull pranks. But it seems that the political correctness of women wanting this egalitarian state of everything's natural and everything's normal. Whereas on a building site, the big blokes are going to take the piss. Maybe I shouldn't say it. Was going to rip and tease and give grief and hard time to the smaller, younger guys. And that's kind of earning your respect as you get older and wiser. All right, that's like coming of age, coming a man on the building site, building your way up. And I'm sure that's the same for other factories or other male-dominated industries. You kind of work your way up through the ranks to get to where you are when you're, say, 30. You know, you earned the right to tease other people. You know, you've earned that right. You've done your time. But that doesn't sit well with women, with the egalitarian state. And the HR of, oh, that was wrong, inappropriate, you can't say that. Now you're on a warning, now you're on a suspension. And just to put this into context, there was, I can't remember exactly what country it was now. Was it Finland or one of these other progressive states? And all the women protested and had a day off and protested. And you know what happened? The country continued to run normally as before. And in fact, a lot of the staff said it actually went better. Now, I'm not trying to take away what women are fighting for. I just want to express that the communication styles of men and women don't always gel perfectly. And so I believe HR causes more problems and more unproductive days in the workforce than anything ever else that's been introduced. We can all see that the reason for HR for health and safety. All right, it saves lives, it saves body parts, and it helps us grow and learn. And so that's necessary. I'm not going to say necessary evil, but a necessary evolution. But HR, human resources, I said something to you and you overheard it and you felt it was inappropriate and wrong when it didn't even affect you, when it wasn't about you. And so that person is hauled over the coals and reprimanded and given, all these warnings. In an industry where, let's just say, it's the NHS or an industry there that you're invested in for many, many years, and you've got a pension and you've got a lot of qualifications and you've invested many, many years and much money into a particular industry, whether it's the NHS or the prison service or the police, And then for somebody to come along and say, well, actually, you're not allowed to have that opinion. You can't say that at work. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm offended. And for that person to potentially be made to change their vocabulary, their narrative, their personality of who they are, and then potentially lose their career and their pension, all because somebody is sensitive and somebody is upset by the way somebody said something or did something. That's thought police. That's policing of thought and speech. Now, our country, much like the US, has fought for freedom of speech, democracy. If I want to say that somebody is overweight and they're fat, then they're fat. It's a fact. But having that policing undermines thousands of years of lives lost for fighting for independence. And I think that not all women are to blame, obviously, but I think part of the feminism movement and HR is really disrespecting the men that lost their lives. And I'm saying men that lost their lives. So that's something that needs to change in the future, I believe. HR is going a bit too far. Feminists are going a bit too far. And feminists, as you hear a lot on the radio and on the TV, are choosing to have double standards of what suits them. But we're not getting to that. It's not a rant. It's not a rave. This is about why dating sucks for men. Okay, so I hear, what can you do about it, Paul? What can you do about it? Right, so this is the conclusion. Spend your time with other men. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Let's go back. Single parent families. We're talking about HR, human resources. Single parent families. I was brought up by a single parent family. I really missed out on a role model, a male role model in regards to shaving. I don't know how to shave. Now, maybe a little bit too much sharing here. I wasn't aware that I was getting less, how do I say this carefully? Less special treatment for happy time when it comes to a woman as a young man, because I wasn't told about the depths of cleaning one should go to. Now, yes, it's gross, I apologize. But I didn't have that male role model in my life that I connected with. And in fact, I was quite fearful of men a lot of my younger life until I worked at the prison service. Because that wasn't I wasn't taught how to fight. I wasn't taught how to stand up to another man and stand my ground and work my way up and build this confidence and self-esteem. That wasn't there for me. I had to stumble through it myself and find it myself through lots of broken relationships. And also the fact that I don't drink alcohol, again, kind of alienated me. Okay, moving forward. DBS, you know that barring service, disclosure and barring service. You know, a DBS. A lot of us have to have a DBS for our job, for our career. If I didn't have a DBS, or I failed the DBS, or also known as the police check, used to be the Scottish barring service. Without that, I couldn't do my job. And all amongst different roles I have, driving a school bus is one of them. And I've come back to it every now and then. I tend to go through a bit of a cycle of trying a few different jobs, and I sort of come back to this. Again, overshare. Maybe I shouldn't be sharing that. But the DBS. Now, that doesn't stop paedophiles. You know, you hear, like, you watch a panorama and you hear about a paedophile living next to a school and things like that. And I think, well, a DBS is just another gimmick, another way for the government to make money and to make us all feel like they've done the right thing. But you got to keep paying. Every 3 years, you got to pay for it again and again and again. And if you lose it, you've lost your career. So let's just say you work in a school as a man. You've decided to embrace your femininity or embrace your educational prowess, and you've decided to work in a school or in a teaching setting. And then let's just pretend, hypothetically, that you're walking past a pub, or you're in Domino's getting your pizza, all right, on a Friday night. And a drunk guy comes over you, he starts pushing your wife around, try to grope her, and like, whoa, 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 hang on, this is out of order, no, you can't be doing this. And he gets in your face and he gets leery and he tries to swing a few punches at you, and you protect yourself and your wife and possibly any other vulnerable people in the Domino's in the pizza shop. And then so there could be a camera seeing you hit this other person. And if you don't have a really, really good lawyer, solicitor, and the other person does, maybe the other person's got a lot more money than you and has a better solicitor, you could potentially get done for assault. And then that would be on your DBS, and then you'd lose your career just because you're trying to protect yourself. Now, on the other hand, I've seen a video on YouTube where a cyclist is swearing at a builder because the cyclist is going along and the builder cut in front of him and knocked him off his bike. And the cyclist is giving him the fingers and whatever. The builder stops, and you can see all this because it's on the GoPro of the cyclist. The builder stops, gets out of his vehicle, shouts and gets aggressive at the guy on the bike. It wasn't his fault, he was just cycling along. And that's all evidence from the video. And the guy gets angry and he punches the guy in the face, the cyclist, and knocks him on the ground. And then drives off. It then transpired that the guy got away with a caution. So you can either get a caution or you could lose your career. And with cameras everywhere now and smartphones everywhere, it's a very difficult situation to be in to protect yourself and also your career. So it's kind of like you're being suppressed. Your masculinity and your desire inside to protect yourself and to protect those around you is being squashed, that you're not allowed to do it, and that you might think twice before protecting your family or protecting your woman or protecting yourself, because you don't want to lose your career because of the DBS and HR and all those other aspects. Political correctness. So I don't want to get on my soapbox. I don't want to go off too much, but it's about suppressing masculinity with women with a high percentage of women in preschool, which I think is a great idea, and in schools and education, which is brilliant because we need that empathy and compassion in schools and education because children are learning. There is a real lack of. It seems like one side is really trying to suppress this masculinity. Back in the day when I was young, we used to play bulldog, in the playground or in the YMCA or in the youth club. We used to play bulldog, and there's a bit of rough and tumble, and there was hierarchy. You didn't wind up the big kids. If you were to be aggressive and wind up the big kids, you would get hurt. And you learn. That's nature. That happens in nature. A small dog, a wild dog, if he pushes the boundaries, then the big dog, the adult dog, the pack leader, would nip that dog and make him howl and get on the floor and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. All right? That's nature. You can't get away from nature. And it's the same in our human society. In the UK, there's very little litigation. There's very little lawsuits. All right, like I said, you might lose your DBS. But if somebody comes up to me and is aggressive and starts poking me and hit and trying to slap me or something, I'm going to do what I can to protect myself. And if that means I have to punch that person in the face, then I'm going to do that. And I don't feel like I'm going to get sued because I'm protecting myself. Okay, just breathe, Paul, just breathe. All right, so it comes back down to suppressing masculinity, from schools to colleges to the workplace, HR, DBS. All these things that I'm talking about are suppressing men being men, understanding the patriarchy, understanding young men and bravado, and allowing men to grow and allowing men to be men, really. Whether it's a firefighter, a soldier, a police officer, we all know that we need that, but we also feel that we're allowing too much of the left suppress that divine masculinity. So there's a divine femininity. There's also the flip side to that, the divine masculinity. And a lot more, I would say now, a lot more women are starting to see that and appreciate that. So I think it's slowly turning the other way. All right, that's my positive thought. It's slowly turning the other way. All right, so in conclusion, what can we do about it? What can we do? All right, spend more time with other men. I found I was ostracizing myself because I don't drink alcohol, I don't eat meat, I don't really like watching football and those sort of tribal games. I find them a little bit uncivilized because of the fighting that's involved. But ironically, there are healthy ways to get involved and be part of a connection, of a team, of a tribe. Whether it comes down to maybe a sport such as, I don't know, judo or even playing dominoes or a pool team, darts team, and doing other things in and around men to feel that it's right and allowed to be a man. You know, whether you're driving a HGV lorry or a coach, you know, around other men is healthy for us men to feel allowed to express ourselves in a manly way. You know, there's a lot of things that get said in the break room and the canteen that's extremely politically incorrect. Sometimes it's a laugh and a joke. Sometimes people actually believe it. And so I can choose to just disconnect from those people that have those beliefs. But being free to say those things in a safe environment, safe-ish, is liberating and allows my masculinity to breathe. Also, becoming much stronger physically. So going out, whether you want to go jogging, I don't think jogging's a good idea, but going out walking, carrying weights, press-ups, doing other things to make yourself stronger, calisthenics, anything to build you up physically and mentally. Because the more we spend time, and I can vouch for this being a single parent growing up, spending more and more time with the empathy and mothering and loving side of womanhood, spending too much time that side detracts from who you are and allowing you to breathe as a masculine man. So it's about having a balance, all right? We're all aware that we have to be more courteous and a little bit more gentle in our communication style when we're around women. But when we're not around women, we should be allowed to breathe and allow our masculinity to breathe and be who we are as men. So doing a job that might promote your masculinity, such as like a HGV or building on a building site, spending time with men more in generally, like I said, whether it's through sports or something else. Don't be a whiner as well, you know. If you want to be a stronger, more alpha kind of male, then if you look to other people that you look up to that you might feel would be good mentors, they lift other people up. They say how amazing other people are. You know, whether it's compliments, whether it's inspirational thoughts and ideas. And I recently spoke at the gig that I was at. I spoke about a member of staff in one of the other establishments, how amazing they were as a young person to have a really level head on their shoulders and be able to have a lot of good values, because we were talking about cleanliness in the restaurant, the cafe they were looking after. And I said this to the owner, you know, how inspirational that young person was, and gave them lots of praise. And so part of being a man is to disconnect from that gossip culture and that negativity culture and start focusing on yourself, you know, being a man, being strong, being a leader, being positive, being uplifting, you know, and a beacon of shining light. I just had a note at the bottom here as well. Also, the note I had at the bottom there was high value men or men that are worthwhile chasing. These women chase these high value men. They don't go looking for women. Women come to them. So what I've learned, I've read a lot of books recently. And what I've learned, a lot of books in regards to relationships and men and stuff like that. And what I've learned is that if you are driven and focused and passionate about your purpose in life, take Elon Musk, Richard Branson, any number of millionaires and billionaires that are focused on they attract women like magnets. Not just because of the money, but because they're driven and they're a leader and they're a beacon of light. They don't get sucked down into the gossip culture. They don't get sucked down into whining and moaning about X, Y, and Z. They're looking at themselves. They're looking at how they can project themselves forward, how they can make themselves more money, how they can grow, how they can build a legacy. They're all about positivity, growth, and getting bigger and better and improving themselves. And that's what attracts the women. That's what brings the women in like magnets. Like I said at the beginning, a woman would drop a handkerchief and then the man would come pick up. So the women, and clever women, will search out a man and his lifestyle and then connect with him. Because actually that's the way it's always been. If you look back at tribal times, a woman would choose, and preferably, the leader, the tribal head, and then his right-hand man, because you can't all be leader, you can't all choose the leader. So the women would gravitate towards the top of the pecking order as much as possible. And that's nature. That's the way it's always been. That's how civilization and has moved forward and grown. Okay, so like I said, focus on yourself. Don't care about the women. Like I said in another video, don't think about getting laid. Think about growing yourself as a better person, financially, physically, mentally. Focus on yourself as much as you can. And then, in time, women will be attracted to you. Now, I know we have desires and wants whilst we're on our path. And that is the tricky one. Okay. But having values and standards will help keep you focused on that path. And it's only somebody that warrants your attention that you're willing to invest some energy and time into that person. But most predominantly, you've got to stay focused on moving forward and building yourself and your company and your legacy and being a mentor and a beacon and striving forward. That's what will attract women. And that's how to beat this dating game, beating the apps and the algorithms. If you're an outgoing man and you can chat to a woman about lots of things and you can be a good listener by summarizing and reiterating what she's said, then you're much more likely to get good quality and good value relationships. All right, but you must stay focused and determined on your vision. That's what drives you, your vision. And that's what brings abundance towards you. Now, I don't want to get all spiritual and namby-pamby, but these men that you look at, these wealthy men, they are very focused on their vision. So hold that in mind. If that's it for this video. If you have any thoughts or comments, then let me know. I'm happy and open-minded and ready to listen. And if you can recommend a great book, then please do so. Thank you very much, my guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye-bye.